Hello, welcome to the University of Florida Trio Center's online training version of Management and Supervision. My name is Ron Trigar. I will be the host and facilitator of this recorded session that you're watching, and appreciate you all attending, and I hope you've got your cup of coffee. I have mine ready to go, and we'll get started. Okay. So preparing for the management portion of your AE exam. We have a lot to cover here. We're going to talk a little bit about the courses that are available, and we'll be discussing some of the important points through those courses that you may see on an exam. And this presentation is covering the drinking water A-level management and supervision material, as well as the wastewater A-level management and supervision material. So this is good for both drinking water and wastewater A exams. And we're going to try not to talk about any one particular industry over the other, because this covers all of them. But if you're in the water industry, you'll have your own sets of things that you'll do in the wastewater the same way. But really, supervision and management is supervision and management, and it's the same for us as it is for other industries. And I think you'll enjoy it, and I hope that this helps you prepare for your state exam at the A level. So we have our copyright statement. Just want to mention to you that these online courses are copyrighted, and at no part of this publication can be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, transmitted in any form, electronic, mechanical, by photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior written consent of the University of Florida Trio Center. So thank you for adhering to that. My contact information is shown here, and it's also over my shoulder here. You can kind of see it behind me. Similar material or information is there. And I'm a certified environmental trainer. I've been in the industry, the water and wastewater treatment industry, for over 35 years. And I am A-level certified for the wastewater, and I'm B-level certified at water, drinking water. I have taken the A drinking water exam and passed that exam as well. I don't currently have enough time. I think I need probably 4 more months of actual experience to get the A license for the drinking water, but it's okay. I'm good with it, and I've taken the test. I've taken all the exams that you guys are doing too. I've started at the D level and went all the way up to the A level. And you know, these exams are not easy. That's why they are called exams. They don't just hand these licenses out to people just for showing up and, you know, being able to apply for the exam. So you know, this is definitely going to put you in a position where you're going to have to really know the material. And the supervision and management courses, which are, there's a few of those, cover different aspects. Um, so what I've done here is put together for you, the attendee of this, is kind of the high points of the different courses that are out there. So we're going to kind of go back and forth between some of these different courses. And if you've taken one course, you might hear something that you didn't recognize from that course because it came from a different course. So this is hopefully going to help cover that for you guys. That's kind of what we do in our face-to-face classes at the Trio Center. So what are those courses? The state approved management courses for the state of Florida. Now, this is not a complete list. I do recommend that you go to the FDEP website, the Operator Certification Program website, and find the exam handbook, which lists all the state approved management courses. So this is not a comprehensive list. This is just the more popular ones that we see people taking in Florida for their exams. And I have some versions of them here that I'll share with you. But anyway, starting at the top of the list, we see where it says Michigan State University. So Michigan State University has a program through their executive programs, online correspondence training. And when I was studying for my A wastewater exam, that's the course that I took. Now, the course at the time I took it was not online, it was correspondence. And I have my copies here. I want to kind of share with you what those look like. The course came with a textbook, or rather this is the workbook, and the workbook has inside of it all of the stuff that kind of fits for the water industry, the water and wastewater industry. And this is now what I believe is online at the Michigan State University. I think all of this is online now. But from what I've heard, a lot of people have taken this and they say, yeah, there's still a lot of essay writing and there's a lot of interaction, I believe, with the instructor. There was a lot of interaction with the instructor when I took this because I mailed this in, my quizzes, and then he hand wrote his responses on there. So this was a really good course. I think it really did prepare me well for the A-level wastewater exam. I passed the exam, so I felt pretty good about it. The course does also come with a textbook. This is the textbook that comes with the Michigan State University's online course. So this book on supervision is essentially covering supervision for all industries, not just water and wastewater treatment. So there's a lot there, and it covers a lot of the different aspects of training or supervision and management, things like the functions of management and all that. It's a pretty comprehensive class. So, and I do believe it would prepare you pretty well for the exam. The next one on the list is California State University out of Sacramento, the Office of Water Programs. And that course is here. This is a very popular course. This is where a lot of folks have taken. This is called Manage for Success. Manage for Success is a really good course, and I did find a lot of good information out of this. Now, I took this course through correspondence study when I was getting ready for my A water exam. So I read this book cover to cover and I went through there and I said, okay, well, how does this match up for the exam? And I found a lot of good information here that would be found on a state exam. However, it doesn't cover every single aspect. Michigan State's covers some things more than this one does, and this one covers more things than Michigan State. So again, there's some differences there, but this is also an approved course, and this is very popular, I think, because of the California State University Sacramento programs being pretty well known in our industry. So it's a good book. There's a lot of good information in here. I think the section on training, of course, I really like the training side of it. So the section that they wrote about training and being certified and all that has been very helpful. So that's California State University's Manage for Success. The next one on the list is Mitchell Training, or Barbara Mitchell Training. Barbara Mitchell has been in the industry for a long, long time and has put together a lot of courses, water distribution courses, and management courses. And I have a copy of her book. Now, I believe this is still as a correspondence course. And you see that there's actually 4 different binders here. There's a management section 1, and it comes with, I'll kind of show you, it has management. This is a textbook that you read, and then there's a workbook that goes with section number 1, and then there's the volume 2 of the course, and then it also comes with a workbook. So there's actually for the Mitchell course, there's 4 manuals. 2 of them are the workbooks that you would use. Now, there's a lot of good information here too. I believe that this course really helps the operator get ready for the management questions that are on the Florida State exam. And I think this course is also a very good one. Now, this is available through Barbara Mitchell Training, and I think she's out of Archer, Florida. And you can find her information again on the DEP website on how to enroll in that course. The next one on the list is the Florida Water and Pollution Control Operators Association, which is better known as FWPCOA. And they have been providing short schools around the state of Florida for many, many, many years. And the management portion of the short school is very good at preparing an operator to take the A-level exam. So if you attend the short school, which was about a week-long class, and you have an exam at the end to get your certificate, I believe that is a very good course to help you prepare for the management portion of the exams. I have a copy of the course that I received from them. So just management course, and I put it in a binder here. So this is the management course that I received from them, and a very good organization. They've done a lot there through them to prepare the operators for all different portions of exams and just training in general. The short schools are very well attended. I believe you can do that course as correspondence also. So if you can check them out, again, you can go to fwpcoa.org and find them there. And if you're not a member already, join the association. Very good state organization to help operators and provide training all over the state of Florida. The next one on the list is the Florida Rural Water Association Utility Management Certification course. Now, I believe that is an online course that is offered through the FRWA based out of Tallahassee, Florida. And if you go to frwa.net, you can learn more about that. That is an approved course for the state exam. And again, for the drinking water and wastewater, these are all approved for those exams. And a lot of folks have taken that course and found it very helpful, not just with, getting ready for the exam, but from what a lot of folks have told me, and I haven't taken it personally, but a lot of folks have told me they've taken that course and it really helped them prepare to be a manager, especially on the side of budgeting and finances and meetings and performing different functions of supervision and management when it comes to the city and town level, city manager type of things, utility managers and all that. So a lot of folks have taken it, and I've heard really good things about it. The last bullet point says others. Now there are other courses available through the state of Florida DEP operator certification program. I suggest you check out their website, and if you need help with that, just contact me at my information. I can forward you the link. But check them out because there are other courses. There are residency courses, some community colleges that are maybe in a town near you, maybe offering a course. Not too far up the road from Gainesville, Florida, is the city of Lake City, and at Lake City is Florida Gateway College, and I believe they have a course that's approved for the exams as well. So there are several out there other than what I'm showing here. Check those out. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot me an email or give me a call. I'll be glad to cover that with you. So let's go ahead and move on. So what is management? Well, management is getting things done through the efforts of others. Obviously, like you see in this picture, there's a gentleman is kind of looking over the shoulder of the guy with the mallet and the chisel there. But essentially, it's involving some sort of delegation. Delegation is giving an assignment to somebody and letting them take on the task while you in essence, sit back and watch them and make sure that things are getting done. So when you become a manager or a supervisor, it's a little bit less hands-on and it's a little bit more delegating and sitting back and guiding and coaching and counseling. Sometimes counseling is fun. Sometimes it can be a challenge. So I've been a manager myself, so I'll share a few things with you guys. All right, so there's some key concepts of management. Management work is uniquely different in that it is not the hands-on day-to-day job duties like I just mentioned to you. That's uniquely different because it involves dealing with personalities and evaluating people, and it's much more personnel related rather than technical related. Managers will plan, organize, staff, direct, and control. I'm going to use my little highlighter here to kind of point something out to you. Here we have plan, organize, staff, direct, and control. Those are the 5 functions of management. I suggest that you kind of put these in your memory bank now and just remember that this is the order that they go in. We plan, we organize, we staff the facilities, we direct folks, and we provide control. And it always comes back and looks back at the plan, by the way. So managers play key roles, but apply some basic human relations skills. And the manager's performance, by the way, is judged by the results that they obtain from the available resources, which essentially is including the workers. Remember that the workers are the frontline folks. They are the boots on the ground, we like to say, and the workers are the ones getting the job done, the day-to-day operations. Managers' performance is judged by how well they get those tasks accomplished. So the workers are considered a part of the available resources. And the managerial action that occurs day to day or even hour to hour is guided by the dynamics of each unique situation. I just want to make sure that we're clear on this because every situation is a little bit different. You could have the same exact water main break happen on the same road, maybe in different places, but have a different crew of people having to respond to that, maybe at a different time of day. And the managerial action may be different because it's a different crew, it's a different, potentially a different situation, again, different time of day, those types of things. So managerial action is really guided by each unique situation. There's not just one set method to manage and supervise that you can go by every single day and expect to get good results from that. Let's just kind of add that onto it. So here's a question. So this is one of those pop quizzes, right? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, pop quiz. Manager's performance is judged by which factor? A, how fast they do the task. B, their personality and their attitude. C, what they do each day, or D, what they get others to do. So if you're thinking about what I just said to you and you're trying to pick out the best answer, I hope that you're realizing that it's D, what they get others to do. That's the managerial's performance or manager's performance. So as a manager myself, I can tell you that one of the coaching and counseling sessions I had with a previous boss who I've really adored, and I thought he was such a great manager. He had to coach and counsel me because it was not about what I did and how well I did the tasks. It was about how well I coached others to get the task done, and that took a little bit of time for me to realize that, and learn the delegation because I'm very hands-on. I want to do all the work myself. So a manager has to kind of be able to let other people do it. So we have the different management levels. We have at the top level, you see here, I'm going to highlight that. At the top level, we have a utility director or utility directors. Now you notice this pyramid or this triangle has a smaller shape here as we get up higher up. So at a particular utility, you may have one director over the whole utility, and you may have multiple wastewater facilities, multiple water treatment plants, multiple collection system crews and pump stations and distribution crews, but the utility director is usually a person who oversees all of that. So you notice it's a smaller piece. And then as we go down, we see in the middle level here, plant managers. Now, the plant managers are the uh, operations folks at the facilities, and they may be the plant managers. There might be multiple plant managers of each facility, or rather of the facilities under the direction of the utility director. So we have maybe if we have 4 water plants, we might have 4 plant managers that are assigned to the utility director. And they're the middle level managers. And then we see at the bottom piece, it gets a little bit bigger again. You can kind of notice that there, the plant or shift supervisors. So plant supervisors, shift supervisors, sometimes they're called chief operators, lead operators, shift managers. Uh, and those could be the supervisor of a particular shift or a crew of people, and they would report to the plant manager. So they are considered first level or frontline managers. So that's the first level. Sometimes that's the first instance where you see operators moving up the ladder and becoming salaried versus hourly employees. So these folks, the plant and shift supervisors, direct the work of the day-to-day operations. So those are the folks that are out there every day, the lead operators, the chief operators that are there every day, making sure that all of the things are getting done that need to be done, and they would report up to the plant manager. The plant manager would report up to the utility director, kind of following a chain of command, obviously. All right, so there's some theories and concepts of management. We're going to go through these, and then I will take a break, and you might want to too. So this is a little wordy. This is a little bit of theory, and I want to kind of point out to you that these are some things that we tend to overlook when we're studying because it's a little bit history related, things like that, but very important for your exam and very important to kind of know how these things apply to us in the day-to-day supervision world. So these management theories are based on traditional as well as modern research. So traditional research and modern research. Traditional is back in the 20s and 30s. Modern research is, the year 2000s and 1990s and up. So we have scientific management. We're going to talk about administrative theory, and we're going to talk about the behavioral approach. So we have a few definitions to cover. The first thing I want to mention is qualitative methods. These methods of research, now this is again about research, these qualitative methods of research use observations and historical data rather than a controlled experiment to prove that the theories are correct. The quantitative methods are a method of research, again, research here, that uses statistical evaluations and controlled research designs, otherwise known particularly as experiments, if you want to call it that, research experiments. So quantitative is a little bit more about evaluating what's happening now and using some controlled research experimentation. So we have two different types of definitions there. One more, here's another definition, is called applied research. I suggest that all three of these ones we just covered, go into your memory bank and you study these. Applied research has practical application in work situations and can be conducted by an organization for the purpose of improving performance or productivity. So I think the picture that you see here is kind of interesting. It says, I was just rubbing these sticks together for fun. I didn't realize I was doing basic research. Well, when a person realized that they can rub sticks together and make a fire over and over and over again, they started realizing that this was something repeatable and you could improve on that performance. They started figuring out, well, if they use drier wood or certain types of wood, right? So this is an example of applied research. In a wastewater or water treatment plant, the application of this into work situations would be where the organization tries something new and something that would maybe boost morale or motivate employees, and then they look and see, did that work? Was this a good idea? This is something that we're going to continue to do, or not. Think of things like incentive programs or new uniforms or something, something that would be something helpful, and the organizations would do this in the mindset of improving overall performance or productivity at the utility. So scientific management is kind of, again, the controlled experiment and using science to say, okay, how can we do the job more efficiently? What can be done to improve the way that the operation is working? So management here with scientific management is concerned with the efficiency inside the organization, and then using scientific methods of research, which is usually controlled experimentation and looking for repeatability, observing and then application of that would be necessary to improve the overall efficiency. So again, management concerned with efficiency within the organization, and methods of research, observation, and application are necessary to improve it. Again, going back to say, coming up with better ways to do certain jobs, maybe better ways to do respond to water main breaks, or to keep utility pieces of equipment on the trucks, those types of things. So scientific management is designed to get the job done more efficiently. In many cases, this has resulted in higher productivity, in some cases production, with other industries. In our industry, water and wastewater treatment, definitely higher productivity or maybe more efficient ways of responding to certain crises. Problems are usually solved through research rather than just intuition or experience. So using scientific management, the employer would use some sound research rather than just saying, hey, let's try this. I have a gut instinct that this will work, without really knowing whether or not it will work. So science background a little bit there is a little bit more of controlled experimentations in some cases. The administrative theory is the separation of management activities from technical activities, and definitely setting up what we know as a chain of command. So, an administrative theory, again, back in the days of the 20s and 30s, when a lot of industries were coming up, and the steel industry and things like that, cars and airplanes and manufacturing, they emphasized the separation of the technical work from the management. So there was a definite division that was starting, and the organization was viewed from the top down perspective. So we had a manager or two overseeing hundreds of workers, and it really stressed the importance of maintaining the hierarchy. That was one of the things that came up. Now we started to see unionization come from after this, because the hierarchical structure tended to be a little bit maybe not as perceptive of what was happening in the trenches, so to speak. So the administrative theory follows that the workers receive their instructions from only one boss, so one supervisor over maybe dozens of workers or more. The chain of command is very important to this theory. So the chain of command is set up again, in some cases, kind of like in the military, where we have a chain of command. And the key principle in this is that the responsibility of the position or the people in the higher positions increases as the authority increases within those positions. So let's just make sure we're clear here. Authority comes with the actual position, and if you become a supervisor, you get some authority with that actual position, and also your responsibility increases once you have those roles and once you move into those higher level positions. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about power and authority and all that here just shortly, but this is your first step into it. So the key principle here is that the higher up you go, the more authority you have, the more responsibility you have. So the administrative theory is also considered a bureaucratic form of organization which uses formal rules and procedures to govern the job behavior of the organization's members, which means employees. So administrative theory is a bureaucratic form. So if you think of a bureaucracy, we're talking about management, city managements, things like that, that definitely have like a governing board and those types of things. So administrative theory definitely has the definition that you see here. Think of the job behavior is the what is being done on the facility site, and how the operators and all of the utility workers are managed, and the organization's members are the operators. So the organization positions are arranged in a hierarchy, again, chain of command, and each position has an established amount of authority and responsibility. As a utility worker, when you get hired as a utility worker or a trainee, you have a very small amount of authority and probably a very small amount of responsibility. As you move up the ladder and you get into other positions and you find yourself becoming a shift supervisor or maybe a shift manager, now you have more responsibility to the utility and to the customers and the environment, and you get some more authority with that. So then you say, well, then I actually have the authority to um, to hire and fire or do evaluations. And as you go up higher up, then you get even more authority and responsibility. So authority is the right of the manager to decide about the allocation of resources. The resources include the budgets, the employees, the chemicals, the equipment, the treatment facilities themselves, the crews of people that are going to go and do this kind of work, assigning job duties. That's considered authority, and the responsibility is the obligation to perform those job requirements. So the higher up you go, the more responsibility you get. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's an important aspect for your A exams. So, key concept is that even though authority is seen as the right of the superior, it really works its best when it is accepted by the subordinate. So, if the subordinate does not really understand the concept or the rules of the administrative theory or the hierarchy structure, then this system doesn't work effectively. And and you see in the military, you see that we have a drill instructor, and they set the rules right up front, and they kind of get everybody in line, saying that I am the boss and you are the subordinate and you'll follow what I say, otherwise you're out. right? So it really only works when it's accepted by the subordinate. So I like that picture, kind of gives you the idea. So the next one we have is considered behavioral approach. Behavioral approach to management is when scientists that were involved with behavioral studies, they got involved with the management movement, the scientific management movement. They studied the effects of worker fatigue. They studied boredom on the job and job design. They found that when people got bored, they weren't very productive, obviously. Kind of makes sense, right? So when people got bored, they didn't really do as good a job. They weren't motivated, and they found that if you could tap into the utility operators or the workers in the employees' motivation, then became more productive, and it became their work became better. So behavioral approach studies were done to try to improve worker morale, but also really the bottom line is to get more product produced or manufactured and have a better quality product. So famous to us in this part of the management world would be the Hawthorne studies that occurred at the Hawthorne facility, the Western Electric facility in Hawthorne, between 1924 and 1932. This study pointed out the importance of leadership practices and work group pressure on employee satisfaction in their jobs and their performance. So this was a long-term study that really showed that certain things really affected the person's motivation and morale, and their jobs got better, or their work production got better, and as they became more motivated and their morale was better. So it essentially downgraded the importance of economic incentive towards workers' motivation. What the heck does that mean? What it means is that the Hawthorne studies, at the end of it, they came out and said, it's not all about the money. It was not all about the salary. It was more about, a decent salary, but good working conditions and things that were outside the realm of the paycheck that really kind of helped an employee's motivation and productivity improve. So it kind of downplayed the importance. Economic incentive really means their paycheck. We all need a good pay, obviously, but it wasn't the only thing. There was other things that really helped out. So the Hawthorne studies found that employees react to many other complex forces rather than just one factor alone. So it was not always about the money, as you see here. There's other factors. Other factors include the job site, the working conditions, the things that are being used to make the product, the safety and the health of the employees, and the employer looking out for them. That was something that became very important. Again, you can kind of trace some of the roots back of unionization back to the Hawthorne studies, or even before that. Now, remember that there's other industries out there, not just water and wastewater treatment, and a lot of the industries were very, very hands-on. Think about coal mining and iron mining and working in a steel mill and working in other factories, textile factories, things like that. So that there became a lot of push to get workers more productivity improve and get workers morale up and a little bit more motivated to do a good job. So management styles will play a part in the organizational behavior. We see in this picture, we see somebody that looks very happy, and we see somebody that looks like they're going to pull their hair out and they're going crazy. So we would like to be probably this versus this, right? That's probably where we'd like to be. So a gentleman named Douglas McGregor came along, and he said that there was these different management styles, and it really affected how the employees' morale and motivation was on the day-to-day job site. So he coined the terms theory X and theory Y. And he said that these two different management styles have opposing views and opposing reactions that come from these styles, from the workers. So it's interesting. Theory X and Theory Y, a very important part of any of our state exam for the Class A level. And the Theory Y, or rather Theory X, is where we have let's say a manager who practices theory X completely, and it's a pure theory X person, would be the manager that believes that by ordering you and forbidding the employees to do anything is the way to get top performance from their personnel. A theory X generally is very strict. They sometimes believe that people will innately avoid responsibility, that they really don't like to work. And if that manager is not looking over their shoulder, all the time, that these employees will lay down on the job, and they'll go hide and sleep, those types of ideas that are that are thought of by the theory X manager. They also believe that people should be punished for their mistakes. That's the way to get the best top performance, is that as soon as somebody makes a mistake, they should be punished, sometimes severely punished with demotions and things like that, or terminations. And theory X manager has the idea that people need for that person to exercise the control because that's how they operate best. Would be kind of like in this picture, this guy here. So obviously, it doesn't fit for everybody. It's an interesting state of being where you have some employees that do like to work for managers that are the theory X, and you have other employees that really don't work well under a pure theory X person. And I've seen it myself in the industry. So it does play a part. Now, looking at the opposite end of it, we have Douglas McGregor's theory, Y personality, or management style, rather. A pure Y manager would be more encouraging of the employees to get the best performance out of them. The word encourage sounds a little bit less stringent than maybe forbidding and ordering, right? The theory Y manager would assume that people do enjoy their work, that they will accept responsibility, that I don't have to apply this strict type of management style, that they'll do the best that they can all the time, and that even if I'm not here, I know that my crew of people would continue to do a great job, and I don't have to worry about them. That's what a theory Y manager practices. They expect people to rise and meet the expectations or exceed expectations in some cases, and that people learn from their mistakes and shouldn't be essentially punished right away. We see a good photo here of a manager. It looks familiar to some of us from TV land, but we have some uh, different management styles here. We have theory X and theory Y, two completely different styles. Now, one of the things I want to share with you is that before I go to the theory Z, is that there is actually middle ground here. We do find that management situations may require a manager or supervisor to practice theory Y as a rule, but occasionally have to be the theory X manager. So there are times when theory X works very well, and there are times when theory Y works very well. Most managers would say that they are tempered enough to say, I know when I need to be this, or I know when I need to be that. And we find ourselves somewhere in the middle in most situations during the day. Uh, Moving on to the Japanese style of management, also known as participative management. Participative management is also known as Theory Z, by the way, and it's the third style of management that really kind of showed how some companies and corporations can get really good performance to other employees by kind of getting their buy-in, buy-in from the workers, getting their feedback, and really using that. Really hit home back in the late 60s into the 70s. We saw that some Japanese companies came along and produced cars that were that you just ran forever, and they seemed like that the quality was better than some of the American made cars. So we found here in the U.S. that these Japanese corporations were practicing participative management. What that means is that they usually offer lifetime employment for their workers, so the worry of being forbidding and ordering and punished is a lot less. They also expect a major emphasis and commitment and involvement of the employees. This is an important concept. Involvement of the employees into the production and quality control decisions. So when you have your workers kind of coming up with these policies and coming up with involving them in the decision making, the whole industry really thrived, or that corporation really thrived, and they found that the quality of the product was much better. And we do see that even in the water and wastewater industry. We do see that utilities that have managers that practice this tend to have workers that will stay forever at this utility and never want to leave. And if you ask any operator in your area, you might say, where is the best place to work? And somebody will say right off the top of their head, oh, go to this place or that place. And it's just a good place. And well, how do I get a job there? Well, you have to wait for somebody to retire or pass away or whatever, because that nobody leaves these places. And we usually find that they're practicing participative management. So the term quality control circles is commonly associated with the participative management style. The quality control circles are where the workers get together with the managers. They're all working together towards a common goal, and the managers take into account the workers' input and their advice. So the production and loyalty of workers to their employers thrived under this system. Again, remember that this is a good description right here of how the theory Z, or the participative management, really improved utility work and corporations. So, all right, so here we go. We have a quiz question here, and we're going to kind of talk about this and take a quick break. So the question says, which style of supervision or leadership is well suited for crisis management or emergency situations? And I'm going to switch over to my pen here and make this be a different color. So let's think about this for a second. Which style of supervision? So we had theory X, we had theory Y, and we had theory Z. So which style of supervision or leadership is well suited for crisis management or emergency situations? Actually, the best one we find is theory X, believe it or not. So theory X is generally used when we have a crisis or a emergency situation. I want to point out to you that this is also known as an autocratic type of management style. Autocratic means one leader, one person overseeing the task or the crisis. Why this works better? So the question is why. Why it works better is because it could be very chaotic when there is a crisis or an emergency situation. Think about it here in Florida. Think about the hurricanes that we go through. The hurricane response, tropical storm response, is usually very chaotic after a storm has passed and a lot has to be done. And if everybody was just doing their own thing, or if we were, getting the groups together to sit and talk about how we should respond, then things might not get done. So the theory X, or the autocratic style of management, works very well under this management crisis situation. And we have a top-down approach. We hopefully will have what's known as an emergency response plan, which is a set of SOPs that we follow, and they're not always perfect. I understand that, but they are what we have to help us and guide us through these situations. The autocratic or theory X manager would be following the emergency response plan and trying to get the utility recovered as quickly as possible. So just want to point that out to you, that if you come across a question about this, or if you have any kind of questions or concerns, what should be done during a crisis or emergency situation. Again, a crisis management could be a water main break in your town that has shut down a lot of your distribution system. That's an emergency situation. It could be with what we're having right now going on with a virus where a lot of workers are out of work. We hopefully have an emergency response plan that we can follow to keep the utilities running, which I know we do because you guys are still doing your jobs. And the emergency response plan has in there a way to keep the utility going, the best management practices. And now, again, remember, they're not perfect. We can always improve upon them, and that's what hopefully will happen after this is over. We'll go back and review those emergency response plans and say what worked really good and what can we do better in the future. That's an important part of your emergency response plan as well. So is the after action reviews. All right, so before we get into leadership styles, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to pause. Hi, welcome back. Hopefully you took a little break there and got up and stretched out a little bit. um, the next portion we're going to talk about is leadership styles, and we have a few to cover here. You might be thinking to yourself, no, didn't we just cover leadership styles? You know, we talked about theory X, we talked about theory Y, we talked about theory Z. You know, weren't those leadership styles? They kind of are, in a way. They are also management techniques and management styles, but this is a little bit more specific about leadership in day-to-day operations and kind of applying certain types of methods and certain types of ways that managers and supervisors continue to get the job done with their employees. And leadership styles do change with every manager is a little bit different. They all have their own leadership styles, but I would say that even with certain employees, you may use certain leadership styles, and with other employees, you might use completely different ones. So there's some things to talk about here. Now, again, remember, this is not a comprehensive course. What we're just doing is going over some basic things here to get ready for the exams. But if you're not sure or you need a little bit more input on these types of things or any of the material, obviously go back through your coursework and double check and reread certain sections if something wasn't clear. All right, so we have 6 different types of leadership styles showing here. We have what's called task style. We have autocratic style, which I kind of mentioned a little earlier. We have what's known as relationship style of leadership. We have delegating. We have role model leadership style and teaching styles. Now, all of these are covered in the courses, obviously a little bit more in depth than what I'm doing here. But you'll notice that the top one is in bold print, and so it's one that we're going to definitely talk a little bit more about than the others. I will talk about the other ones a little bit in just a little while here, but let's get into this task style leadership. A task style leader is described as focusing on results. So if you're a task style leader, you're using management styles that are focused on getting a job done, maybe more so than relating to the workers or being a autocratic boss. You're more about the task at hand. Sometimes special projects come up and you are assigned to a team of people to get something done. The leader of that team may practice this task style leadership because they are focused on getting the results done. We have a lot of different things that come up in water and wastewater utilities, special projects, and these projects are tasks that have to be done. The manager may use techniques that would be described as maybe tough but fair, maybe demanding of certain things to be done by certain deadlines without really giving a lot of credence to things that may have come up and why things weren't done. They might be a little bit more tough. And the leaders of these task style situations will set goals and expect results. And again, like I said, this could be special projects, it could be committees, it could be where you get assigned to do something with a set of people off on the side. Maybe that's not part of your day-to-day operations. So that's it's a different style of leadership that maybe you see in everyday situations. The way that we follow task style leadership is to have a clear chain of command structure. So that means that everybody on this committee or at the facility would know who the boss is and who they go to for questions or work assignments. The delegation of authority by that manager is rare, saying I'm going to give somebody, I'm going to delegate authority to somebody to do something other than me doing it if I was the task style leader, but the input might be welcomed. So again, the authority would be rare to, or the delegation would be rare to say that I'm going to just let anybody do what they want to do. There has to be one person in charge, but you're welcome to give me some input and I'll take it into consideration. So that's a task style leader aspect. And the work will seldom proceed until the manager's confident everybody knows what they have to do, that they're all committed to doing this, and they're properly trained. So again, think about a strike team of people going in an emergency situation. Maybe you're part of a team that's going to help another utility. So the strike team might be a certain set of people that are going to wire up a lift station, and we would have electricians and operators and people that are familiar with this, but we would have a task style leader in charge of that strike team. The leader would be the one responsible for getting that done. So that's kind of a good example, I think, on how that fits. The leadership in work situations versus work situations is something I want to get into, but I'm actually going to defer just for a second. I'm going to kind of go backwards for just a few seconds here. I want to go back to this slide that talked about the other leadership styles. Now we covered task. That was what we just talked about. Autocratic is the theory X style, which is a pure theory X leader is the one that demands and forbids and and uses that type of leadership style. Relationship leadership style is more about the boss being your friend and trying to form relations and get the job done through kind of more of the soft sell type of leadership style. Like I don't know, what do you think? What should we do? And getting a lot more input and letting employees make decisions. Delegating is obviously delegating out some of the work to be done and just saying, here, go do it, and I'm going to rely on you to come up with the plan. Role model leadership style is where the manager actually starts to mentor some of the employees, maybe has a few employees that are up and coming to get their licenses, higher level licenses, and aspire to be managers and utility supervisors and directors. And the managers would then take on more of a role model type of management style, which might include that employee in some of their meetings and things like that. And then teaching is, again, a little bit more towards the theory Y style of management, and particularly maybe the theory Z, it's more participative. Teaching style of leadership is where we really let the employees practice and try things out, and we coach and counsel, and we give them a lot of feedback along the way. So those are some of the high points of these different leadership styles. We did spend a lot more time on the task style because it seems like it's a little bit more appropriate for our A exams. We see a little bit more about that. And I think the task style leadership is a little bit more involved and needs a little bit more explanation than maybe the other styles of leadership. So that's kind of why we deferred off just for a second to that. So let's go back to the leadership styles versus work situations. To be successful as a manager, you really do match up your leadership style to each work situation. So every situation is different. We said you can have a water main break today, you can have something happen at the facility tomorrow, you can have construction going on, you can have a coronavirus epidemic or a pandemic that's occurring like we have going on now. So every situation is a little bit different, and these situations require us to be adaptable and be able to adapt our management and supervision styles. So let's talk about these three conditions that exist in any one work situation. We have interpersonal relationships. That is the relationship between you as the manager and the employees, which are maybe the operators or the trainees, and their relationships with each other, Okay. The actual task that needs to be done, what is actually the task that we are trying to accomplish, and then the workers and task maturity. That's where we have a set of tasks that need to be done, or a task that needs to be done, and how experienced are the workers at getting this task done. So let's just say, for instance, we have to drain a water tank, a basin, for repairs because something happened inside of that basin. Well, that might have to be done very quickly. We might have to drain the tank, make the repairs quickly, and get the tank back in service. That happens in both water, wastewater, distribution operations, all of that. So if you have a lot of operators who are brand new, who have never done this before, you have a task worker task maturity that is essentially very young, and maybe going to require more coaching and counseling and teaching to get the job done along the way, but also let them be able to do this in the future again on their own. Now, if you have a set of veteran operators or seasoned operators that work at the facilities, or employees that are very, very adept at repairing things like this, and maybe have seen this a lot, then you have workers and task maturity that's a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more older. So this does depend. The situation would depend on who is going to work with who and how the job will get done. So that's just something I want to point out. So three conditions that exist in any work situation. Remember those. Those are very important. So you see in this picture, we see a veteran operator working, and that's this gentleman here. He is coaching and counseling the other gentleman on how to get the filter back in service. There were some repairs being made. So the worker task maturity is considered to be the capacity, the willingness, and the ability of the worker to accept responsibility and their knowledge and experience to perform the assignment. So the more veteran the operator or mechanic is at getting the job done, the more qualified he might be to do the job on his own or teach others, is kind of where that worker task maturity comes into play. That's a concept that not a lot of people really comprehend, and need a little bit more emphasis on that, because you may see some of this on your exam and have to answer questions about that. Okay, so here we go. We've covered theories of management, we covered leadership styles, we've covered the concepts of management, and we've talked a lot about some of these basic things that have built us up to this particular point. We're now going to get into what's considered the five functions of management. There's actually six, by the way, because you're going to learn as we go through this. There's one that's not quite showing up here that we'll talk about, and maybe you can guess what it is, but I'm not going to elaborate yet. We're going to see what that is, and you can kind of guess and see if you're right. So we have these functions of management. We have planning, we have organizing, we have staffing, directing, and controlling. They go in this order, as you see. And by the way, the controlling comes back around to planning. The controlling always looks back at the plan. So we're in a constant state of uh, checking and acting and rechecking and making revisions, and directing the jobs and controlling if it's going to be done or not, and then go back to the plan, the emergency response plan. All of that stuff is very important. When you get to the controlling part, you're always looking back at the plan. All right, so the first one, function number one, planning. What should we do in the future? What should be done in the future? So in the planning of getting jobs assigned and getting things done, we will set goals. The goals are, hey, we need to have this done within us. We need to get this done, and this is something that the citizens are requesting. We need to get them clean drinking water, safe drinking water into another part of the community, or something. We're gonna have some objectives. The objectives help us meet the goals. In that function, we're then going to produce policies and procedures. We're going to make SOPs in the function of planning. The SOPs come with the with the planning, developing the policies. A policy could be a mission statement. The mission statement is a part of the plan. SOPs are a part of the plan. The SOPs and the mission statement help us achieve objectives, which then helps us achieve the goals that were set. So keep that in mind. Planning is very important. The plans can be short range plans. Obviously, short range could be what's going to happen today or tomorrow, this week, maybe during the month. Long range is usually months or years. What are we going to be doing in the summertime? What are we doing in the fall? What are we doing next year? And maybe 5 years from now, what are we planning 5 years, 10 years from now? Long range plans. And then lastly, plans could also be what we call contingency plans or an emergency response plan. You see a picture here of some wildfires, and obviously a contingency plan is something that's an emergency. We're going to have to go to our ERP, the emergency response plan, and follow those SOPs. And remember, autocratic styles of leadership tend to work well with emergency situations. Proper planning will help us maximize the utilization of our assets that are available, people, equipment, and materials. Those are all the assets and resources that we have available. Proper planning provides maximum utilization, helps us avoid waste of money and things like that. So, and waste of chemicals and waste of equipment, things along that nature. Planning is probably the most important function of a manager and one of the most difficult. We see a bold statement here. I'm going to highlight that. Planning really is one of the most important functions because without the plan, we really don't know what is going to be done day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. A large portion of any manager's typical workday is involving planning. Now, I do want to highlight this. It says, especially the level of the manager. As the higher up you go, the utility directors, the higher level the manager goes, the more that person is involved in planning. So just keep that in mind. Function number 2, organizing. How will the work be divided and accomplished? So now we know what the plan is. We know we've set some policies. We have some procedures. How will the work be divided and accomplished? How are we going to get our resources put into place? Now, the resources, again, could be the employees. We're going to organize ourselves and follow that chain of command structure. So the function of grouping people and work activities in order to obtain the goals with efficiency and effectiveness is the definition of organizing. The function of grouping people and activities together to get the job done efficiently is organizing. So under the heading of organizing, we have things known as the unity of command or the hierarchy structure. We have span of management. We have departments being formed. We have staff positions being developed or designed. And then we have something known as line positions. I'll talk about these. The unity of command is where each employee clearly knows who their supervisor is and what level of authority he or she has. So you probably know who your direct supervisor is, and you probably have an idea of how much authority he or she has. You probably also know who the top person is and how much authority they have. So that's part of the unity of command. Each working unit has one person in charge with authority to make decisions. Again, given some authority to make decisions on the day-to-day activities rather than having to maybe call the city manager for every little thing. I hope that makes sense. A thing to remember about span of management and span of control is how many people can a manager effectively supervise. Now, according to our books and the coursework that we see that the number 8 comes up. Now, they are saying about 8 people maximum is the number of employees that a manager can effectively supervise. When you get more than 8 people, it tends to get a little bit looser as a group and a little bit less like following plans, a little bit tougher to keep control of everybody on and keep them on the same plan. So even though you might see different numbers in your utilities or in your industries, the books are saying about 8 people maximum is the number. So when we start going higher than 8 people and we have one manager in charge of, say, a dozen people or 16 people or 20 people, we find that breaking these groups into departments becomes a little bit more effective. So organizing ourselves into departments is a way to improve efficiency and effectively use the employees and the managers. So breaking up large workforces into smaller units. And then you have mid-level managers or supervisors and leaders of those units. So think about this. If you're a small utility and you're having to do everything, and you're getting more and more and more work put on you, and more regulations are coming down the line, and we have to do more and more work, or you've expanded your plant and now you have just much more to do, you're going to probably hire more people. You might find that as your utility expands, you might need more people to do distribution system work or lift station works on the collection system side of things. So we find that breaking them into departments might be helpful. So you might have a pump station department, you might have a line maintenance department, which just deals with the water or sewer lines, the pipes and valves. You might have lift station people just do lift stations or pump stations. You might have sampling crews. The more population you serve, the more samples you're going to collect. You might have just dedicated sampling people. When I was an operator at one utility, I was the chief operator. I oversaw the water and wastewater side of things. We only collected about 14 samples a month for coliform. I mean, it's crazy. 17 maybe at the maximum, and I could do all of that as an operator, and go get the samples and take them to the lab and be back in half a day. I can get that all done. Today, that utility has grown, and they collect more than 100 samples a month, and they have dedicated sampling people to do that. So obviously, the further out you grow, the bigger you grow, the more departments and sections that you'll have. So just want to kind of keep that in mind with you guys. The organization's position boundaries. Now think about this. We have a hierarchy of chain of command. You guys probably do as well, have a chain of command, and maybe it's written out and you can kind of see like a flow chart with a person here and a person there following the flow pattern. And inside of each of those positions is a certain amount of authority and responsibility built into that. So as you become a chief operator from an operator, you will recognize that your boundaries of authority and responsibility have gotten bigger. You're much more responsible now for the overall operation during your shift or during your day at the facility. So authority is given with the position's title and the actual position itself. Authority, a certain amount of authority is given. So when we point that out, authority, what authority is a person or group that is officially invested with the power to command, exact laws and enforce laws or rules, and potentially judge. Now you see some photos here. We see the EPA logo here. We see the state of Florida Department of Environmental Protection Agency administration there. The DEP logo there, and we also see good old go to jail, go directly to jail. So you obviously get the idea that these folks have some authority, and in some cases, operators have really pushed the limit and have gone to jail when they clearly violated the Clean Water Act or the Safe Drinking Water Act. So we have to really pay attention to these things. Now, you as an operator may have some authority with your position, given with your position, maybe to oversee the work of certain people. As an operator trainee, you might not have really any authority, but as you move up the ladder and become an operator one, an operator two, or an operator three, or a chief operator, you get more authority with that position to oversee other people that may be subordinate to you. And again, then you still are responsible to your manager of the facility who has authority over you. So it's a chain of command. Obviously, you probably already get that. Responsibility is an assigned or delegated task, a duty, a burden, or an obligation. We have responsibility. We're obliged, we're obligated to our customers and to the environment in the state of Florida and around the world to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So we have this obligation as an operator of drinking water, wastewater utilities to do this. And our responsibility is assumed with the position of authority. The higher up you go, the more authority you get, the more responsibility you have. Authority equals responsibility. That's a key component. And again, not every course that we have available to take your A exam goes into depth on that, but that's definitely something that you want to pay attention to as you prepare for your exams. All right, so you notice that that just got a lot larger and bold and red and all that. So that's a key component, isn't it? That's really important. Another concept about authority, responsibility, and delegation is power. Authority is by definition the right or privilege to direct or request a behavior or action along with the right to discipline. That's where we have authority. Authority, think about the police in your town or in your city or in your state police have the right or privilege to direct and request behavior or action along with the right to discipline. Definitely have that. Power, on the other hand, is the ability to obtain the action or behavior that was directed. Power is sometimes something that we see in the utilities where maybe a person who works with you has the ability to obtain the action or behavior that was directed, but they're not the person in charge per se by their position. Maybe they're not the lead operator, but they don't have the authority to hire and fire or discipline. So power is something that is seen by some people behind the scenes, um, that can be a challenge for a manager. We have to pay attention to this when we become managers. So, does power equal authority? The answer is no, it does not. Power does not equal authority. Authority is given to the managers through legitimacy of the position, right? Because you applied for a higher level job and you were given that position amongst other people that might have applied for it, and now you have the position. So, you've got some authority with that position. Power is enhanced by trust and recognition within a work group. So, power is something that people tend to achieve um, by um, earning that within the group. Authority is given to the person by getting hired or promoted, but the power is earned. Power does not equal authority, though. You can have power but no authority to enforce the rules. All right, so here's our next question. It says, which managerial function includes a description of the boundaries of authority and responsibility of a supervisor's position within a department? So the answers, potential answer choices are A, managing, B, organizing, C, directing, or D, controlling. So give you a second to think about this. Go back and look at the question again. It says, which managerial function? So we're talking about one of those functions of management would include the description of boundaries of authority of a supervisor's position within a department. I think the key word here is department. When did we start departmentalizing? We did that when we became organizing or organized into hierarchical structure. So the answer is B, organizing. All right. Function number three, staffing. Staffing is considered personnel management. In some cases, it's the most fun part of the five functions of management. Remember, we had planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. Here we are in the middle. And I kind of have found through my career that staffing is some of the most rewarding parts of being a supervisor or a manager. Within the staffing realm, we find ourselves finding employees, selecting employees, interviewing employees, training people, appraising them, giving them evaluations, and developing people, developing operations staff that would cohere into a unit that works well together. So staffing is an enjoyable part of being a manager, but it can also be one of the most challenging because, as you well know, if you have 10 employees, you have 10 opinions and 10 different types of behavior and maybe 10 different attitudes. So it can be very challenging. Under the heading of staffing, we are now going to be looking at morale and motivation. What makes people do what they do? There was a person back in the day, one of these scientific management folks that did a lot of the behavioral research. His name was Abraham Maslow. And Abraham Maslow came up with this hierarchy of needs, which gives us a view of why people are motivated by various things. Again, we said earlier that the Hawthorne study showed that it wasn't always about the money, the salary that kept people happy and made a productive employee. There were other things that kind of kept morale up or boosted productivity. So Maslow came up with this hierarchy of needs. Now, just for your information, this is not an exam type of question, but I think this is important for us to recognize here that the word motivation is defined by Webster's dictionary as something within an individual rather than without, which incites him or her to an action. Any need, an idea, an emotion, or some organic state that prompts you to an action. Essentially, if I can kind of rephrase this, why do people do what they do? What makes people do what they do? Why do you want to be a water A operator? What is motivating you to take this exam? What is motivating you to be the wastewater A level operator? What is it that is within you that's making you do this? Is it motivation through a salary increase? Is it better shift work? Is it better hours? Is it a promotion to maybe another utility? What is motivating you to sit here and listen to me drone on and on and on about all this stuff? Why do you want to pass this exam so much? That's something within you. Everybody's different, by the way. So Maslow came up with the hierarchy of needs. I'm going to go through these a little bit one by one. Basic needs are the bottom. It's the biggest section. It's the foundation. Let's make sure that we're highlighting this well for you guys. It's the foundation of getting this stuff um, in order. So basic needs is the largest section. Then we have safety and security on top of that. It's a smaller section, but it's still very important. Belongingness, again, it's a smaller piece of the pyramid, but still very important. Remember, basic needs is the biggest at the bottom. We have ego status to be fulfilled, and then at the very top, Maslow said, we have self-actualization. I would think that for purposes of a state exam, it would be important to know a little bit about these and how they apply to us in our work situation. So the first thing we'll talk about is the basic needs. The basic needs for any human, employees of water and wastewater utilities or not, is food, shelter, clothing, to keep us following our cultures and our standards that we have here on this planet. So we obviously need food, we need water, we need shelter, and we need clothing. So in the workplace, let's look at an example here. The workplace example might be, hey, it's nice to have a toilet and a sink. It's nice to have a bathroom at the utility. I have worked at a utility that I did not have that. I worked at a utility that had a garage that was basically a portable garage that was the building. We didn't even have a portalet there. I had to go to the down the road Jiffy store, a convenience store, to use the toilet and the sink. So that was not much fun. Um, Safety and security is the next one on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now remember, the first one needs to be fulfilled first. Then we have safety. Safety is security, orderliness, protective rules, stability within the workplace. An example of this would be your hard hats, your PPE, the handbook policies that are built into your workplace. You know, the handbook policies give us the sense of orderliness and stability because we know that everybody is following these, or at least is aware of the rules. Maybe they're not always following them, but they're they're aware of the rules, and that gives us a sense of security. A good example would be, you know, if you have policies in place to say what would happen if we keep coming in late all the time, you know, then we all know what those employee rules, the handbook might say about that, or in other situations that might arise on the job site. So that's safety and security. The next one up the list is belongingness and inclusion. Now, these are getting a little bit less necessary as a human being. These are definitely more within a person, just as more like feel good types of things, more behavioral and more psychological rather than basic needs like the food and shelter. So belongingness and inclusion is feeling accepted by your peers, maybe appreciation by your workplace. You know, getting a pat on the back and getting some attaboys from your workers. Family ties, friendships that are built within the utilities. You know, we do have a lot of folks that spend time together outside of their work because they just get along so well. Group memberships, becoming a group of folks that are a member of the Operators Association or the American Waterworks Association, or in Florida, the FSAWWA, the Florida section of the American Waterworks Association, would be an example of a group membership that maybe all the employees are members, and we all go to a meeting, or we all get to kind of go to a short school, or we have a school done at your utility, which is nice, and we all come together. A workplace example here would be yearly barbecues, quarterly barbecues, meetings, you know, lunch and learn type of sessions, maybe team building exercises. Again, those might sound kind of hokey to a lot of people, and they say, yeah, you know, that's all that kumbaya stuff. But it does actually help. It does kind of help build the team. It kind of helps everybody work a little bit better together when we do have a crisis, by the way, or we have an emergency situation. The ego status is the next one up the list. Now, again, this is a small portion of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have to have everything else built first, foundation. Ego status is a desire to excel. We like to display competence. This is getting the utility safety award or an individual award for doing a good job. Social and professional rewards that come from doing certain things in your community or in an organization. Um, Obviously, workplace examples would be maybe your own office. I mean, that definitely sets us apart from the day-to-day workers when you have your own office to go to. So that's a little bit more of a status symbol that kind of sets us apart. Maybe business cards, maybe having business cards made. I know when I worked for utility and I got my first business cards, I was just thrilled by that. I thought, wow, I've really made it, so to speak. You know, this was cool. The top of the list is according to Maslow is self-actualization. Now, this is where a lot of you are right now. If you're again listening to this broadcast, and we're saying that you want to pass this exam and you're doing this on your own, you are potentially challenging yourself to be more creative. You're demanding greater self-achievement of yourself to get this license. Maybe it's not mandated at all, and you're just doing it just because you want to do it. It does involve taking risks. Obviously, you know, the A exam is the top exam, and it might be very challenging. It might be a tough exam. There is a risk of not passing. Obviously, we don't have a 100% passing rate on these exams. That's what exams are designed to do. You know, exams are designed to discriminate between people who probably really should be an A-level operator and making water for millions of people in their city versus folks that probably shouldn't be. You know, so that does involve taking risks. And a person at this level might seek autonomy in job assignments. You might go to your boss and say, hey, I've got some time available available, and maybe I'm just doing the day-to-day things. I want something extra to do. Do you have anything extra that I could do? So you seek autonomy in a job assignment. You say, let me handle this for you, and I can do it, and then just give me some coaching and counseling along the way. And a person that has achieved this level is really concerned with their own personal growth. And again, in the workplace situation or example, it would be that these people really just enjoy work, as it is. They just are these operators and workers that you have at your utilities that just love what they do, and yep, we get a paycheck. That's great, but man, I love making safe drinking water for people. I love training people myself. I just enjoy work itself. So I would say that I have achieved this level in my career. And I do want to point out to you that none of this would matter. Self-actualization and ego status and work groups, or belongingness wouldn't matter if your town was hit by a hurricane and you lost your home and your utility was devastated. You go right back to the beginning stage again, where those basic human needs are much more important. So these things can be taken away, as the higher up you go. These can be taken away by crisis or events that occur. And obviously, we know in the United States we have a lot of different types of natural events that occur that could happen. So. All right, so factors that affect an employee's motivation. Now, again, Maslow also found some of these things. We also found this through some of those, through the Hawthorne studies, that an employee's motivation and their morale, it tends to be better when the employee feels like their needs are met. Again, their needs are met. They have a sense of job security. They're receiving a good paycheck. They're able to pay their bills. They have a sense of security at their facility. Then, once that occurs, is that the employees are able to pursue interests, like outside interests, things that make them happy, things that they get to do outside of work. Again, they might not be able to do that if their needs weren't met to begin with. So it's building upon the needs being met. And then the attitudes tend to improve when an employee is able to pursue their interests because their needs are met. So you can kind of see that these keep building upon each other. That's a picture in this presentation of me fishing, which I like to do, saltwater fishing, which my attitude is always much better after I pursue my interest, but I wouldn't be able to do that if my needs weren't met and I couldn't actually afford to buy a fishing rod or bait or whatever it is, maybe a new lure or whatever type of thing. So that definitely affects employees' motivations. Um, Frederick Herzberg was a scientist, a research person, a behavioral research person that came up with a couple of different aspects of employees' motivation. Frederick Herzberg said that we have two different things. We have what he coined as hygiene factors, and then we had motivators. So the first hygiene factors are the things that are built into the job itself, built into the utility. The utility and its policies and its general working conditions are considered hygiene factors. They're built into the job. The type of supervision, the wages, the security, the job status, all of that stuff that's built into the utility that basically are external to the employee. When it says things that are about the job and external to the employee, which means the employee doesn't have a lot of say so over the type of supervision he might be given, or the wages that she earns, the security or job status that the employees and operators have. Again, that's something within the utility. So those are called hygiene factors, coined by Frederick Herzberg. The motivators that he then built upon, he said that employees self-achievement, their growth and their advancement, their interest in the work, and the responsibility that they're given helps their motivation. So he found that supervisors who created work environments where these factors were a part of the style of leadership he found that those employees were much happier, they were much more motivated, that their actual job performance was much better when these things were addressed. So this is something that I think it's important for you as an operator taking your A-level exam to kind of keep this in mind as you go up the ladder and you become a manager. Keep these things in mind. I think these do actually help with your overall utility operation. I have found it in my career. I've been a manager. I've been an operator trainee. I've been through almost, almost all positions. At a utility with respect to within the fence, working at the water and wastewater plants. And I have found that these things really do play a part. And as a manager, we had a really good crews of people working with us when our supervisors followed these practices. So various methods of motivation continued on are reinforcing the performance. I mentioned earlier a pat on the back, a bonus, a gift. Well, maybe not a gift. Now, let's go back and say maybe gifts might not be something that we want to encourage because every utility has something a little bit different with receiving gifts. So we just want to kind of keep that maybe off to the side. Let's go back to a pat on the back. Let's stick with that. Positive reinforcement rewards are things that we do as managers to keep our employees um, motivated and the morale high. A pat on the back is something of saying, hey, you did a great job. You guys are doing a really good job. I really appreciate that. I brought in a box of donuts. Here's some coffee. Take a break, an extra break or something to that effect. Just something to give positive reinforcement. It's a method of motivation. It really is. Now, motivation can also be negative motivation. Negative motivation is also known as discipline or punishment. If you have ever been disciplined or punished and you have found that it changed your method of acting or what you do, then it did what it was supposed to do. It actually reinforced your behavior because the negative reinforcement was something that we learn from, hopefully learn from. So again, if you've been written up or have been in some cases terminated, for whatever, that's a type of negative reinforcement, believe it or not. It is actually a method of reinforcement. It's not the most fun, obviously. I've been on both sides of that coin too. I certainly have received mine, and I've also had to dole out some of that. It's not fun either way, but it is a way to reinforce behavior. So employee behavior versus the employee's attitude is something we want to spend a few seconds on here. Um, Personality is a part of an individual which allows others to identify you by through your behavior, the values and the preferences of that individual. That's all a part of a person's personality. Everybody's experiences and personalities are different. That's a key concept. I know that you probably all think this is common sense, and of course, everybody knows that your experiences and personalities are different. But it does play a part in being a manager of a utility because if you're the manager and you have 6 people underneath you that you supervise, everybody's personalities might be different. I mentioned earlier that you might have 10 employees, you might have 10 attitudes and 10 behaviors and 10 personalities and 10 opinions, and you just never know. Um, so how do we kind of figure this out? How can we figure these things out as a manager? What tools do we have out there to help us with these types of personality behaviors? So we have something known as the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Now, I do notice here that I'm going to point out that this is a typo. That should be MBTI. I just realized that. So it should be MBTI, not MTBI. It's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. This was a mother and a daughter who came up with this many years ago, and they kind of put personalities and behaviors into, I think, 16 different types of categories. And it helps determine the personality type of individuals within an organization. One of the places I worked had us all do the Myers-Briggs tool, and the managers then were able to kind of learn about us as individuals, and we all learned about each other as individuals. It was a very powerful thing that they did for us, and I'm a big fan of this because I'm very analytical by nature, and I love looking at data, and I love looking at research, and as a manager, this has been a great tool. There's other ones out there. There's definitely other personality type indicators, and I say tool because this is a managerial tool. There's other ones out there. You can certainly use other ones, but this is one that comes up on an exam occasionally. So it helps determine the personality types of individuals. It helps establish routines of interpersonal relationships consistent with their personality types. Sometimes you don't want to put too many of the same personalities together. It just does not always work. It's good to kind of know how people operate as human beings and know who would work well with others, and maybe also be able to recognize when there may be a conflict. Um, by the way, just want to point out to you that I've done this myself, and my type indicator is ISTJ. So look it up. You can figure it out on your own. Okay, so personality building. A personality is the sum total of a person's preferences and choices that they make, along with their decisions that they've made in their life. That's all part of what builds a person's personality. These choices that we make in life result in a person's behavior. Behavior can be evaluated by a manager. I want to point that out. This is in bold print, and I'm highlighting and circling and all that. Behavior can be evaluated by a manager. We do personnel evaluations, we do annual evaluations here at UF, we do quarterly evaluations, and these behaviors are what we evaluate. It's not fair to evaluate a person's attitude because that is not something that's exactly measurable, but a person's behavior is measurable. So the employee attitude is more about a mental position, a feeling, or an emotion towards a fact or a condition. You might not like the way that the whole country has had to handle the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic that we're all going through right now. We all have different opinions and feelings and positions about these types of decisions that were made by governors and city leaders. And that is something that we might say that person has an attitude towards it. An attitude is often blamed for unhappy and unproductive employees, like you see in this picture. It kind of makes me chuckle every time I look at this. It's sometimes common for a manager to say, well, that employee just has a bad attitude, and I don't like his attitude. I'm going to evaluate the attitude. The attitude is something that should not really be evaluated, but their behavior on the job site can be evaluated. I think that's an important concept for us to recognize. Behavior is something that is outwardly shown, and an action that a person takes that can be measured and evaluated. And an attitude is something within the person. You might have somebody with a bad attitude as an employee, but be the best operator you've ever seen because their behavior is exceptional. So it can definitely happen. So when you're evaluating employees, it's important to remember, do not evaluate their attitude, always evaluate an employee's behavior. Keep a supervisory notebook handy, jot things down. When you see somebody doing something right or doing something good, make a note of that so that when you do give the evaluation, you can go back and say, hey, I noticed that on this date you did this. That was great. I'm really appreciative of that. However, on this date, this occurred and you handled it this way. Let's learn from that and maybe not do that again, that type of thing. But you're evaluating the employee's behavior. All right. We're still, by the way, in the discussion of staffing, right? So again, this is a big section. Staffing is one of the biggest ones. I said it's the most enjoyable, but it can be the most challenging. Obviously, you guys are getting that from this presentation. Let's talk about interviews. And now I do want to point out that every utility has a different human resources type of department or human resources division that may handle interviews or handle interview situations specific to that utility. I've gone to a lot of job interviews myself. I've also been an interviewer. Sorry. And I found that each utility is a little bit different. You may have to have questions pre-approved, and maybe not. Maybe a very small utility, and you just kind of wing it, you know. But I do want to point out there are generally questions that can be asked at a job interview, and there's usually a list of questions that should not be asked. The first list here is what the interviewer can ask. Questions relating to other jobs, your education, your training, your experience, and these might include what your job duties were, what your responsibilities were at that particular facility, what your satisfaction was with your salary, and uh, and your reason for leaving. You know, the things you liked and disliked about that job. You know, why would you leave, or why would you be interested in this job and leaving that utility, and what do you like about it, and what do you want to have better? You know, those types of things. Those things that can be asked at a job interview. Now, going to the list that should not or cannot be asked during a job interview are any questions that refer to a person's race, their sexual preference, their age or their birth date, their religious affiliations, their national origin, any disabilities, and marital status. These are a list. This is a list, and it's not the most comprehensive. There are other ones that you might have at your utility, but these are lists that should not be asked during a job interview. Um, Now, I do have a lot of people come to classes and they say, yeah, but Ron, you know, when I filled out the application, they wanted my birth date on the application, or maybe on the application it said I had to check a box that says that if I'm Hispanic or if I'm Caucasian, or American Indian. Isn't that kind of going across these lines? Well, again, remember that this statement, it says job interviewers cannot ask. Now, that might be a part of an application, but it's not something that's asked in the job interview. So when taking disciplinary action, there's a list here that we should follow. And again, this is common in some of the courses that you have taken. The first step to follow is investigate the situation. That's number one on the list. Now, if you're the manager and you feel that some discipline will need to be taken because a situation occurred at the job site, the first thing you do is investigate. You just do not take every employee's word for it. You have to do your own investigation. There's usually a procedure in place or a standard operating procedures that would be followed. Then you go back and you review the policies and procedures and your protective rules that you have in place. Go back and look at what the handbook policies said. Review any past actions or precedents that were set. If you're the manager that constantly lets some people come in late, and then other people get in trouble for coming in late, and not everybody does, then you have kind of set a precedent that it's okay to be late, and not everybody has to follow that rule because you let it be happening for some people and not others. So we want to make sure that we're being fair across the board with these policies and procedures on an even basis across the board with every employee, that you do not treat anybody differently. The timing of the events, you know, make sure that you do have the timing down and you know what happened first, second, third, what the employee's knowledge was of the infraction. Make sure that they were aware that it was an infraction, that if it's a handbook policy, then we generally have signed statements that show that we received the handbook and that we read them, and that anytime we get new things to put in our handbooks, we generally have a document that we sign and we turn back into human resources that show that we did receive those new rules and regulations. What the employee's responsibility was with this infraction, and what management's responsibility is. You know, we have certain things that we have to abide by. Management's responsibility to follow the handbook policies is very important. If the infraction is very, very severe, and yet the manager does not do their due diligence and their responsibility to take the right disciplinary action, it sets a precedent to show other employees that, well, the so and so didn't get fired for this, I guess I'm not going to get fired either. And you really do have to follow these handbook policies. You do want to make sure that you're keeping everything equal across the board, and So we'll move on. All right, so that was all staffing. That covered a lot of stuff. Now we're down to function number 4, directing. Directing is the function of coaching and guiding and counseling and mentoring and teaching employees, directing the day-to-day operations. It's known as leading, motivating, influencing, potentially mentoring people. It's getting the group of people to follow the plan and get on board and let's get this job done. That's all part of directing. Directing is day-to-day operations. It's directing the whole utility to achieve the goal as intended. Directing, or how people direct employees, will play a major role in that employee's morale, their job satisfaction and productivity, and their communication. How you communicate to your employees is very important. Directing plays a major part in people saying, this is the best place to work. I love my boss. I like the way that they manage us here. This is a good place to work. I enjoy going to work every day, and we have a good team. Those are the types of places that generally have the employees that stay there for long periods of time and that do not experience a high turnover rate. If you find that you're working at a utility that has a high turnover rate, that people tend to come and go quickly, there may be something there to this statement saying maybe it's a part of how people are being directed. So if you're that manager there, then pay attention. So the time spent directing versus planning. So let's talk a little bit about this. The frontline managers, if we go all the way back to that pyramid where we had utility directors and mid-level managers and then frontline managers, the frontline supervisors, sometimes known as the lead chief operators, those folks tend to spend more time directing, in the function of directing, than maybe the utility directors would, even though director is in their title. The utility directors tend to spend more time in the planning function. The planning function is planning for 5 years out, 10 years out, planning for expansions, planning for emergencies, becoming part of a flaw warn where you become part of a group of people that's going to practice mutual aid. Those types of things is where directors spend a lot of time. Now, the front level managers or frontline managers tend to spend more time on the day-to-day operations. What do we have to do today? What needs to be repaired? How many samples need to be collected? What is happening this week? That's where the frontline managers tend to spend more time. So pay attention to that when you take your exam. Make sure you're recognizing what position they might be asking about. If it's utility director, then you're going to say they spend more time planning. If it's the frontline manager, probably going to spend more time directing. Time elements are also important. You see in this picture, we have one clock showing 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. and then 5 p.m. Generally 9 to 5 is what they're trying to show here. Employees really should know when the assignments will begin and when they are to be completed. We need to know deadlines. It's important for us, as a lot of utility operators who like to follow a plan and have some rigidity to that. Many employees function very well with that and need to know, when is the deadline, when does this have to be done. Some people like to start working on a project right now, even though that's a 3-month deadline. Other people will wait until the second month to even start working on it, or wait till the last week, which is in some cases procrastination. So employees really need to know when the assignments begin. We need to know, what time do I need to be at work? What are my shift hours? If I'm going to be hired here, what are the hours of my daily activities? The problem that occurs with open-ended time elements are things like this list shows you here. You see procrastination and no accountability as bold print here. So tasks tend to get put off until the last minute if you do not give people some idea of the deadline. If you say, hey, work on this whenever you get a chance, projects tend to not be worked on. If you say, I need this done by a certain time and date, then we have an idea of what needs to be accomplished and when it should be accomplished. So in some cases, projects never seem to get worked on if they're just given open-ended time elements. And it really does, believe it or not, set that up for failure, failure to be accomplished. The last one is function number 5, controlling. Controlling is making certain the objectives will be achieved as planned. Remember, we said planning was function number one, and it says right here, making certain the objectives will be achieved as planned. Here's another word, plan. Controlling looks back at the original plan to make sure we're going to meet that plan. And what will happen if we do not? What are the corrective actions that we have to take in case of a failure to get that objective met? So we have to have a plan B, a plan C, those types of things. So when we talk about controlling, it's looking back at the plan and making sure we're going to meet that plan. I like to think of it as this whole situation is, let's use the analogy of a mission that's given to a battle group in the U.S. Navy. We have a battle group that involves a large aircraft carrier. We have all of the support ships. We have the destroyer escorts. We have everybody that's going to be protecting this. We have a large group of ships. Now, steering a battleship is very, it can be cumbersome. Obviously, it does not make very sharp turns, make like say maybe the destroyer would or the PT boat. So when we're thinking about this, the plan is set in place. The ship and their battle group leaves port and they say we're sailing towards Tahiti. So they're constantly making changes to the course so that they achieve the plan of getting to Tahiti by a certain date. And if they're not going to meet that, what will the action be to get us on track? Is there a storm in the way? Do we have to go around a hurricane that's brewing in the Pacific? So again, going back, controlling is saying, how will we meet the plan? What should we do? What's the plan B? What's the plan C? That type of thing. So it's a continuity of operations is really what it's all about. So we sometimes tend to follow the plan, the do, the check, and act, and it comes all the way back around onto the plan again. So that's another common way to word this: plan, do, check, and act. So. All right, now here we are at a big bold print here. It says budgeting. This is the number 6 type of management function that I mentioned at the very beginning of this discussion, that there is a 6th function of management that many people put in different places. This budgeting function of management can fit itself into different parts of the 5 functions. We had planning, planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. Budgeting can be found in different places of that situation. Budgeting is, in effect, a plan that identifies the amount of resources or money needed in order for the organization to function effectively, and how that money or the money will be allocated, used, allocated, appropriated, those types of things would fit here. So budgets can be a part of the plan. A budget can be a part of the controlling. Budget can be a part of directing. All of that. It can fit in different places. There's 2 different budgeting divisions. There's 2 divisions that budgeting falls in, and we have what's known as the capital outlay budget or capital improvement budget, and then we have the daily or monthly operation and maintenance budget. So I want to talk about these 2 specifically. The capital outlay budget is essentially the long-term budget for big projects. When we say big projects, I mean things that are going to take a lot of money or a lot of capital funds to get this achieved. So I mentioned to you as a utility director, the utility directors may spend a lot of time on the function of planning. So if the utility director is tasked with expanding the utility by building a new water plant or a new wastewater plant in another area of the service community, rather, that is going to be a big plan. So that's a capital outlay. It's going to be long-term needs of the utility. It might require long-term funding. We might have to actually issue municipal bonds and get people to invest in this. We might have to search for a grant, a loan. Municipal bonds, I mentioned already. The USDA, the rural development function of the USDA, sometimes offers low interest rate loans, sometimes offers grants. You have to go find them. They don't just come knocking on the door generally. We have to go search them out and ask and apply for these grants and loans. Utilities might find themselves being guaranteed a grant, but need the money right now. The grant might not be coming for another year, but we need to start paying engineers and surveyors to go out and find the land where we're going to build our water plant. Well, if we need that money right now, we may have to get a low interest rate loan to get the whole thing going. So again, sometimes we have to go find those. Those are called capital outlay budgets. That's part of that function. If you need expansion of your plant, you need large equipment replaced. We're running facilities now that are 20, 30, or 40 years old, and motors and blowers and pumps are getting worn out. Tanks need rehabilitation and renovation. So those are generally over the next 3 to 5 years, when we're looking down the road to say what needs to happen then. And that would be a capital outlay. Sometimes people call it capital improvement projects, or CIP budget. They're long-term investments that help improve the utilities customer service. The O&M budget is the second type of budgeting, and it's primarily used for almost like we would say the day-to-day operation of the utility. The program budget, or zero-based budget, is a preferred method of an operating maintenance budget, because we're generally doing this each year. We're setting this up each year, and it's based on the previous year's usage of that money. Sometimes we find that we had extra money left in a line item and we didn't use all of that, or we find that sometimes we needed more money in another line item because we went over budget on something. And that's where we're going to talk about a little bit more here in just a second. We also see, as a bullet point here, a fixed or maintenance budget. A fixed budget is where we generally roll over year to year the same amount of money, and we really don't put any more resources allocated into line items. We say it's just a fixed budget. We have a certain amount of money per year to spend, and that's fixed. It's put in place. We're guaranteed that that money would be there. Okay. So the O&M budget is prepared generally on a year-to-year basis. I know a lot of operators, myself included, dread this time of year. Sometimes we say, "Oh my gosh, it's that budget time of year again. We have to have budget meetings. We have to go to town hall. We have to go to the commission meetings, and we have to defend our budgets that we're trying to get allocated for next year or even 2 years out." Sometimes we're operating today on budgets that were prepared 2 years ago. So maybe we didn't know how much chemical costs would be, or that fuel prices might drop, those types of things, which happen. Sometimes fuel prices go way up, which had happened in many about a decade ago. Fuel prices went way up. Cost of polymers and trucking the chemicals went way up. So we ran out of money really quick for some of these chemicals, or for the shipping of those chemicals. And now we're finding that fuel prices are coming down. So who knows? It might be a budget surplus. I don't know. But these relate day-to-day operational expenses. We generally know that we have to run process control tests in our laboratories, so we're going to get a certain amount of chemical reagents to run those tests. But perhaps you need a new instrument. Maybe you're getting a new type of process put in your plant, and now you're going to need a new instrument. You need a $3,000 instrument. Now that's something that we might have to budget for. It might not be coming next year. It might be 2 years from now. We have to budget for it. But if we're thinking ahead, we can sometimes get these things put into place when we need them. If we are accurate and we think ahead to what is going to be coming down the road. And again, like I just mentioned, it utilizes current available funds to kind of build from. So zero-based budgeting, or working from line items that start with zero money in each line item, is preferred. The zero-based budget is where you actually have a blank slate and you start populating the budget with the numbers. Now you could look at what you're using this year, and that certain things are going to increase by, say, 5% per year. Maybe uniform costs, that's a good one. Uniform costs generally will increase over time, but at a pretty set rate, you know, a certain percentage per year. Maybe you're going to have new employees and you're going to need a little bit more money. So you would start with a zero line or a zero place on this chart somewhere, and you'd say, okay, we spent this much money this year, but we know that the costs are going to go up this much, so we're going to populate that little cell or that place with a certain amount of money for next year. Or maybe you're having a reduction in staff and you don't need as much money for uniforms, you know, that type of thing. So you got to start with a $0 figure and then put the numbers in place. A fixed budget is simpler, and we just say, hey, let's just put whatever we had this year and put in 5% and don't even do any math. Well, that's not really as going to be accurate as the zero-based when we really in depth look at each line item. Obviously, the fixed budget or maintenance budget, sometimes it's called, as a simpler method, and a lot of people tend to like this. But the zero-based is preferred because it's a more accurate way to match the yearly income and expenditures in an efficient manner. That's a definition I think is important that you put into your studies for the budgeting part of the exam. So we end up with the functions of management with budgeting somewhere in these other places. Again, budgeting can be part of the plan. It can be under organizing. It can be in directing and controlling. We can find budgeting anywhere in here. But essentially, the 5 functions of management build upon each other. Obviously, planning, and then organizing, and you guys get the idea. And where do you fit into all this? This is something that every operator and every manager and every trainee and all that, we're all different. You find yourself in any situation right there in the middle. You might find yourself as the day-to-day operating manager. You might be a director, and you might find yourself doing all of these things, and even in one day, who knows? So that's where you guys kind of are in all of this. I hope that this session was helpful for you all. This session does cover drinking water and wastewater Class A supervision and management questions, because those same courses are approved for both the drinking water and the wastewater A level. So this management material really covers a lot of bases. If you have questions, like I said earlier, please reach out, let me know how you're doing. If this was helpful, I certainly would like to know that. If there's something we can do differently, let me know that too. We have some questions coming up next that we're going to see how you guys do with these. So let's go through these. So it says, the first question, it says, 3 factors which affect an employee's motivation are what? A, attitude, interests, and high salary. B, attitude, pay, and benefits. C, attitude, interests, and needs. D, attitude, work environment, and pay. Which of those statements is the correct one that would affect an employee's motivation? Well, if you were paying attention through this, you'll find that it was letter C, attitudes, interests, and needs. When your needs are met, you can pursue your interests and your attitudes get better, right? Okay, true or false? Authority is earned while power is given through the legitimacy of the position. Now, I just want to point out to you, we don't have true and false questions on our state exams here in Florida. They're all multiple choice. They're all one answer is the best answer. This is just something we wanted to kind of throw in here. We kind of throw in some different types of quiz questions as we go through the courses. So which one of these is correct? Authority is earned while power is given through legitimacy of the position. This is actually a false statement. It's the opposite. Authority is given through legitimacy of the position and power is earned. So that statement, as it reads, is false. All right, budgeting is a part of which managerial function? Oh my gosh, now this is going to be a tough one because I said it could be any of these. But if you were paying attention, we had a description of this at the very beginning of the budgeting part. And we said that the budgeting was a part of, is it A, organizing, B, staffing, C, controlling, D, planning, or E, directing? Now, the correct answer, the best answer for this one is budgeting was a part of the plan. The budgeting is a plan, and it is a part of the planning stages. So the best answer for this is planning. Now, um, go back and look through this. If this is a little fuzzy and you're not sure, go back and look through your books and you'll find that that is where it's listed. And by the way, remember that we don't have 5 answer choices on the state exams, it's only 4. Okay, so which style of leadership is focused on results, requires a clear chain of command, and the manager might be described as tough but fair? Is it A, the teaching style of leadership? Is it B, task style of leadership? Is it C, the democratic style of leadership? Or is it D, delegating style of leadership? Now, if you're not sure and you have to go back through and look, that's fine. But I hope that you paid attention and you'll remember that it was the task style of leadership. That was one of the definitions under the heading of task style leadership. So watch out for that one. All right. Which of the following has practical application to work situations and can be conducted by organizations for the purpose of improving performance or productivity? This was early in our discussion when we were talking about the different types of management theories and all. So is it A, applied research? Is it B, scientific management? Is it C, behavioral approach? Or letter D, task style leadership? So which of the following is practical applications to work situations can be conducted for the purpose of improving performance and productivity? That was ding, 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 A, applied research. And that's a definition for that. All right, who is given credit for the term hygiene factors and motivators? Was it A, Douglas McGregor, B, Frederick Herzberg, C, Abraham Maslow, or D, Nathaniel Hawthorne? This one is letter B, Frederick Herzberg. We did mention to you Douglas McGregor, who came up with theory X and theory Y. We did talk about Abraham Maslow with the hierarchy of needs. And Nathaniel Hawthorne is actually an American poet, but the Hawthorne name came along when I mentioned the Hawthorne Studies. All right, finish this sentence. The Hawthorne studies at the Western Electric Plant, A, showed the need for theory X management style. B, helped develop the MBTI personality types. C, led the development of the participative management style. Or D, downgraded the importance of economic incentive on employee motivation. So I'll give you a second to think about that one. And the answer to this is letter D. It downgraded the importance of economic incentive on employee motivation. All right, so this concludes this session. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. I know that was a long session. I hope that you took some breaks in between and I got up and moved around a little bit. You can always reach me at the University of Florida TRIO Center through my phone number, which is 352-294-3881, or you can reach me through email at rtrigar@trio.ufl.edu. Also, encourage you to check out our website at www.uftrio.org. You can find a lot of things there on the water and wastewater program pages. We have student resources with some quizzes, things like that there. Also, check us out for the different courses that we offer through asbestos abatement. We have solid waste courses, we have hazardous waste generation courses, and of course we have the backflow and backflow prevention courses available. So check us out. We hope that you'll follow us online as well with Facebook or LinkedIn. Thank you.